had worked for all my life, and I had to start again with all my trouble and my strife. I thank my God above to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA. Well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
A lot of people go through the halls of Congress not knowing really what they stand for, what they really support. Phil Gramm is not one of those people. I served in the House with him, had the opportunity to watch him up close. Saw him get stripped of the Budget Committee. We punished him, of course, the Democrats did, by sending him to the Senate. Phil Gramm is a man of principle, first and foremost. He is a man of courage. He is a man that is true to himself and has done things his way. He is one of the brightest people that ever served in the House of Representatives. He has served this nation well, he served his state well, and he has been a great third senator for the state of Georgia. He is a Georgian, having been born in Columbus, reared there, went to school at GMA, later to the University of Georgia, getting his PhD there, as the film indicated, and then moving on to Texas after having experienced and enjoyed chili dogs and Big Orange from the varsity. He is a great American and a man of tremendous principle. When he made a decision to step down because he couldn't live with what had happened to him from the leadership at that time in the House, he resigned his seat in the House of Representatives. This is a young congressman who represented a district in Texas that had not elected a Democrat in over 100 years, a Republican in over 100 years, and he had a safe Democratic seat. But when he decided to change parties, a man of principle, he resigned his seat immediately, went back to Texas, ran in the special election as a Republican, was overwhelmingly elected, and the rest is history. Phil Gramm, presently of College Station, Texas, is not yet 60 years of age. An economics PhD. He taught at Texas A&M University for 12 years, published numerous articles, publications, books ranging from monetary theory and policy to private property to the economics of mineral extraction to a host of other issues. He first won an election in Texas on his first try. He is presently serving his third term in the United States Senate. He serves on the three most critical committees in the United States Senate. Banking Committee, where he has served as chair, the Budget Committee, the Finance Committee, where all tax legislation is written, and trade legislation, and a host of other important issues. He has been bipartisan in the sense that if it was the right issue, he was for that issue. He joined with Senator Robert Byrd of West Virginia when in passage of a highway bill which dedicates the full gasoline tax to road construction. He has constantly worked on reforming Social Security to make it an investment-based program. I think most important, if you look back since the mid-'80s, every single major budget reduction bill, every single tax reduction bill, Phil Gramm's name is a part of, or he has been a leading proponent. When announcing that he was not going to seek re-election, he said, "The things I came to Washington to do are done." In announcing his retirement, he made that statement, which I read in the Wall Street Journal. But none of this happened by accident, he said. It required years of political argument and intellectual conviction by many people like Phil Gramm, according to the Wall Street Journal. He waged and I'm reading from the editorial, he waged a constant war against federal spending, which finally made him somewhat unpopular in the Senate. Yet he was effective as a legislator, breaking the logjam to pass a landmark financial services deregulation bill in the last Congress. He made himself an expert on both Medicare and Social Security and free market reforms, for those programs are now part of the mainstream of political debate. He did not have the best bedside manner, according to the Wall Street Journal. And when he waged a campaign for the presidency, he was not successful. Bob Dole defeated him in the primary. If he had defeated Bob Dole, as I look back, he would either be president of the United States for a couple of terms, or he would be a great salesman for Viagra if he lost. So I guess he's still a winner. I want to close by reading a letter which Senator Miller has sent. But before I do, I want to tell Phil, as a former congressman, I want to tell you, as you leave the Senate, there are some things that will be a bit different. I know you love to pheasant hunt and quail hunt, duck hunt, geese hunt on the eastern shore. You will not always get the first shot after you retire. For years you have been accustomed to having the first shot, but that will not always be the case. You will have to drive yourself. You will have to learn the routes. And while I am now somewhat of an expert on the internet, and I'm beginning to receive, I can't send yet, but I want to recommend that you start studying some of that while you have aides and assistants to help you. But I want to read Governor Miller's letter in closing. Dear friends, I'm sorry that I cannot be with you tonight. The Agriculture Committee is currently in the process of marking up the new farm bill, and if ever I needed to be present at a meeting, this is it. The title being considered is the title on commodities. That's where peanuts are, and conservation. I wanted so much to be with Phil Gramm when he was being honored in Georgia. He is a dear friend, and there is not a U.S. Senator for whom I have greater respect or affection. I've often been asked the question, what have I enjoyed most about being in the Senate? I answered that unhesitatingly. The thing I have enjoyed most is getting to know Phil Gramm. I have enjoyed not only working with him, but learning from him. In my opinion, he has the best mind in the U.S. Senate. He also has a great sense of humor, and without question, I have never known a political leader who can take a complex issue and put it in the same language where the average American can understand it better than Phil Gramm. It is a great and wonderful gift. I especially want to thank Senator Gramm for the leading role he played in getting the Paul Coverdale building at the University of Georgia, and for allowing me to work with him on the Bush tax cut. I'll leave it to my, well, I'll leave the last sentence. He's talking about me there, Phil, but he's hoping that I will go easy on you. I want to present to you a great Georgian, a great American, Senator Phil Gramm. Thank you very much.
Well, first of all, normally you have to die to have all these good things said about you. And I'm happy that I have lived to hear them said. I just want them repeated when I do die. I'm very happy to be here. Ed, thank you very much. I had the great privilege of serving with Ed for 6 years in the House. Ed and I worked together on most of the good things that happened to America in those 6 years, and 4 of those years were with Ronald Reagan, so a lot of good things happened to America. Let me say I have enjoyed working with Zell Miller. I got close to Zell Miller because of Paul Coverdale, interestingly enough. I love Paul Coverdale. I can't put it in past tense. I've never understood when somebody dies, you talk about you used to love them or you loved them. I love Paul Coverdale. Never does a day go by that I don't think about him. My grandmother used to say, as long as anybody remembers you, you're not dead. Well, as long as I live, Paul Coverdale will never be dead. But when Paul died and Zell was appointed, I had met Zell a couple of times in his capacity as governor of the state, and he had always been very nice to me, but I really didn't know him. But I felt that I was going to have a natural tendency to resent him being there. So when he came, I made it a point to go over and see him and tell him that I'd been very close to Paul and that I wanted to work with him. Well, as it turned out, it was a very good thing that happened that I did that. Zell and I have become very close friends. We passed a dramatic reduction in taxes, affecting everything from the death tax to tax rates to the marriage penalty. And without that partnership, without Zell Miller's support, we would not have gotten that job done. And so I hope all of you are proud of Zell. He is doing a very good job in the Senate, and I enjoy working with him. I want to first say that I know this award is given to Georgians, and I am a Georgian. The lens through which I see the world was Gramm in Columbus, Georgia, and at the University of Georgia. And I have appreciated the friendships that I have in Georgia. I ran for president, as you saw in Roger's show, which was terrific, Roger. Maybe you're doing the wrong thing in life. But his wife felt that way for some time. But I want you to know that I turned out to be a very poor presidential candidate. But it was a great experience. I have no bitter feelings about it. But the highlight of it is all the people in Georgia who supported me and who welcomed me as a native son. And I want you to know that I will never forget it, and I appreciate it. Probably the greatest compliment that I ever got in the Senate came from Sam Nunn, who was then the senior senator. Richard Shelby from Alabama is a very dear friend of mine. And I was working on some kind of issue, and we apparently had a big vote or something. I forget what it was, but I don't forget the story. And so Richard Shelby said to Sam Nunn, "Boy, you are sure as hell lucky, because if Gramm had not moved to Texas, you probably wouldn't be here." And so Sam said, "I'd be here. It's Weitz Fowler that wouldn't be here." Let me say, I want to thank all of you for the Georgia Public Policy Foundation Freedom Award. Obviously, when you're sharing an award with people like Clarence Thomas, no justice on the Supreme Court that I admire more than Clarence Thomas. Zell talked about my ability to take complicated subjects and make them simple. Clarence Thomas gets to the heart of an issue as simply, as clearly, and as directly as anybody that I've ever seen on the Supreme Court. And I'm proud to share an award with him. I'm proud to share it with Bill Flowers. Flowers Industries is one of the finest companies in America. I don't know any company in America that does more to support conservative causes and conservative candidates than Flowers Industries. If every company in America was as committed to what we believe in as Flowers Industry is, America would be a very different country today. And it would be richer and freer and happier. So I don't know if anybody's here from Flowers Industry, but if you know anybody, you tell them what I said. I'm also proud to share this award, or at least with a previous awardee, Griffin Bell, my dear friend, the star of the Carter administration, a man of integrity and judgment, and what every great lawyer ought to be, in my opinion. And finally, Zell Miller. So let me, I don't know whether Rogers is really going to give me this award or not, but I want to say thanks in advance. Now, first of all, I want to say something about the Georgia Public Policy Foundation. My wife is the head of the same type organization in Texas, the Texas Public Policy Foundation. So I know something about state think tanks, and I know how important they are. Ideas have consequences. Now, you probably believe that a place as practical and as political as Washington, D.C. is dominated by special interest. But if you think that, you're wrong. Washington is dominated just as Atlanta is dominated, just as Austin, Texas, our state capital in Texas, is dominated, not by vested interest, but by ideas. Ideas determine vested interest. I'll never forget when we were debating the Reagan tax cut in the House of Representatives, the Democrat alternative insisted on cutting the highest tax rates all at one time and then cutting everybody else's rate over a 2.5-year period. It was extraordinary. But it was the result of the triumph of an idea. The idea then was what we now call supply-side economics, but it was a simple idea that people respond to incentives. And if you let people keep more of what they earn, you unleash this wave of creative energy, and you create more jobs and more growth and more opportunity. We elected Ronald Reagan and we changed America in the 1970s because of the triumph of ideas in federal think tanks and in the intellectual community around America. These state think tanks are vitally important because ideas do have consequences and they do ultimately affect and dominate public debate. And so I want to first thank you for supporting the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, and I want to urge you to continue to support it. I'm very proud to accept this award because freedom is what my public service is about. I believe in freedom. I have seen it work. Growing up in Columbus, Georgia, I basically observed that our system works, that there's an inherent fairness to it. Now, obviously, it's better to be pretty than to be ugly. It's better to be rich than to be poor. But in America, being poor and ugly, even combined, they don't represent insurmountable obstacles. When I went to Winton School, my mama was a practical nurse. Neither of my parents graduated from high school. And my mama bought a house, the poorest house in the school district of Winton School, because it was the best school district in town. And when I went to Winton School, it didn't take me long to discover that there were haves and have-nots, mostly haves at Winton School. But as I said many years later when I spoke at the 150th anniversary of that little elementary school, it also didn't take me long to figure out that there was nowhere else on earth where privilege meant less than it did at Winton School. It's an amazing thing to me that even today on the floor of the United States Senate, the Democrat majority leader was talking about rich versus poor, haves versus have-nots. And yet in America, it is commonplace. In fact, each of these tables have people, in some cases everyone at the table, who are living proof that in America, hard work and talent out. If we have a problem with rich people, it's we have too few. And I want to see us have more, because when people succeed in America, they don't do it alone. they take other people with them. So I'm proud to get a Freedom Award because everything I've fought for, from controlling spending, which is basically a battle about what kind of country we want. What is a more basic freedom than how much of your income that you earn that you get to keep? And if there's one principle that I believe I've observed in my whole political life, it is that government and freedom are enemies, and when one is in the ascendancy, the other is in decline. And given the choice, I pick freedom. Let me also say that my public service has been about ideas. I first got into the public policy debate. I was a young professor at Texas A&M, and it was in the mid-'70s, and we were in the midst of the energy crisis, and even people with good sense were talking about rationing gasoline, and the joyride was over, and we were never going to have enough energy, and we're going to have to learn to live on less. You remember all that stuff. And so I wrote an article for the Wall Street Journal on whale oil. And it basically was an article that explained this had all happened before. That in the late 1850s, we started running out of whale oil. It was a principal industrial lubricant. It was a lighting source. And I basically drew an analogy. To make a long story short, I was invited to come and testify before the Senate Energy Committee. And it was one of the biggest things that had happened in my life. So I went to Washington. And on my way back, I was trying to figure out how am I going to explain all that I've learned in one day in Washington, D.C. to my wife. So when I got off the plane, I gave her this analogy. There's a crisis. This giant piece of paper blows in and affixes itself to the Capitol dome. And people on Capitol Hill believe what is happening there is happening all over the world. So there's an energy crisis. And the Democrats rushed forward with the most powerful words ever uttered and the most dangerous. I have an idea. And the idea, I said, is to spend $60 billion on an artificial sun. And then I said, and the Republicans rushed forward with the weakest expression ever uttered, and that is, I don't have an idea. I hadn't had an idea in 30 years. But I'm opposed to their idea. But I'll compromise. We'll spend $40 billion on the artificial sun. We'll have the private sector build it, and we'll regulate it. And then I explained what is missing is we need somebody to say, hey, there's a piece of paper stuck on the top of the Capitol dome. Well, for 24 years, I've been pointing toward that piece of paper and trying to tear it off. And I do believe that ideas have consequences. I do believe that ideas make a difference. Today, I used a point of order from the old Gramm-Rudman law to kill the Democrat stimulus package. So we're not going to be subsidizing buffalo meat or turning chicken manure into energy. I know there'll be disappointment in some quarters over that. But hopefully we're going to put together a package that will provide incentives for people to work, save, and invest. Someone reminded me coming in today that I was here at their hospital debating the Clinton health care bill, and I'm glad Rogers used that quote of mine. It's interesting, and I just pointed out to make my point that ideas do have consequences, and that ideas are powerful. Paul Coverdale and John McCain and I did over 50 presentations all over America against the Clinton health care bill. We did one in Atlanta. Some of you were there. And at first, I tried to attack it as inefficient. I tried to attack it as costly. And boy, it was just like beating your head up against a brick wall. But then finally, one day, suddenly out of my mouth came, and when my mama's sick, I wanted to talk to a doctor and not a government bureaucrat, and on that issue there will be no compromise. And from that point on, the Clinton health care bill was deader than Elvis. Because the real issue was freedom. And when people understood that their freedom was jeopardized, they wouldn't put up with it. I want to close by just talking about two things very briefly. I want to talk about this war we're in. I'm obviously proud of our president. I'm proud that we have shown some bipartisanship. I hope we can keep it up. But we're going to have to make a fundamental choice here, it seems to me, over the next few months, and that is, are we Athens or are we Sparta? And it's a very important decision that we're going to make. And I think we're going to have to be very careful, because more freedom has been lost in wartime than has ever been lost in peacetime. And it's very hard to get it back. And there are always people that have an agenda. The president said, give me the ability to reorganize security at the airports. And the Senate adopted a bill that did that, but mandated that every employee involved in security at the airport has to be a government employee. Which means you can't fire them, you can't give merit pay, you can't give merit promotion. And it would take years to get such a system up and running. That was a political agenda that got into emergency legislation. Thank goodness the House of Representatives stopped it. But we have to be alert. Now, my basic take on this whole war thing is the following. We have a fundamental choice. We can change our lifestyle, or we can change the lifestyle of the people who are committing terrorist acts against us. I would much rather change their lifestyle than change ours. There is no finite amount of money that can protect us against terrorist acts. We can't put a guard at every railroad crossing, at every bridge. There is a limit to what we can do. And in my opinion, our money will be better spent hunting down these people and killing them, or bringing them to some form of justice which results in the same result. And by this, I guess the best analogy would be that the best defense is a good offense. If these people are on the run, if they can't coordinate what they're doing, they cannot engage in effective terrorist attacks against us. And rather than mortgaging away our treasury domestically, rather than limiting our freedom, I think we would be much better advised to spend our resources going after them where they live. And I think we need to follow an adaptation of an old Texas Ranger adage. And the old Texas Ranger adage had to do with when you associate with thieves. And the adage was, if you ride with thieves, you die with thieves. And the point was, if you were riding with a band of criminals, whether you were a criminal or not, you were aiding and abetting what they were doing, and you were held accountable. And I think that's the position we've got to take with regard to terrorism. There can't be any neutrals in this war. If people are neutral, they're against us. And I think they need to be held accountable. Finally, let me say that I know many of you, since many of you have been my political supporters, were unhappy about me deciding to not run again. I just want to say a little bit about that. First of all, Ed mentioned that I think the deciding factor in me not running again is that if you don't look at the end of a 6-year term at what you've done in the previous 6 years and what you've done to that point in your career, and where you stand in terms of what your objectives were when you went to Washington, then you're not doing something right. And I concluded in September, fortunately I announced this a week before the 11th, or else it would have been very hard for me to do it, and I probably would be pushed along into another 6 years in the Senate. But basically, I concluded that the things I came to Washington to do, to win the war against communism, to balance the budget, to cut taxes, to change the public policy debate, that those things were done. Now, not that they're done forever. All those battles will have to be fought again. No victory is final. Good ideas and truth have to constantly be defended. Freedom often dies for lack of a second. All bad ideas have constant life and are supported by large numbers of people. I don't know why that's true, it's just a fact. So I'm not saying all those things are won. In fact, in the weeks after the 11th, much of that has been eliminated. But that was a dominant factor in my thinking. There's something noble about giving up power voluntarily. George Washington certainly understood that. But I want everybody here to know, it's conventional for people who serve in Congress to say when they leave, well, I just got tired of all of the politics and the narrow-mindedness and the money chase and the demands of campaigning. I want you to know, first of all, I really wanted to run again. I just didn't want to serve 6 more years. If I could have run again and then gone home in January of next year, I would have done it. I find raising money interesting and challenging, and I in no way find it demeaning. Nor do I feel that I've been bought when somebody contributes to me. I just totally and absolutely reject that notion. Nothing's more fundamental than supporting people you believe in. I also want you to know I'm not burned out and I'm not disillusioned. Now, I don't know if they're Jeffersons and Washingtons and Adamses in Congress or not, but I'm not sure they're not. How do you know until years later? You know, in 1774, John Adams wrote that we face a crisis, and yet there are no leaders worthy of dealing with this crisis. 1774. How could he have known that assembled in colonial America at that very moment was the greatest assemblage of leadership that the world has ever known? Let me also say, I do not love government. I don't trust government. I think government is a necessary evil that must be constantly watched and controlled. And I think that ultimately the debate is between government and freedom. And I don't think there really is much of any other debate that goes on in a free society. But I have more respect for our system today than I did 24 years ago when I went to Washington, D.C. So with so many people talking about being disillusioned and unhappy and burned out and turned off, I want you to know, as a person that many of you have supported and many of you know, I am none of those things. Our system works. My little service for 24 years, which was greatly over-exaggerated by Rogers's movie and by Zell's letter and by Ed's kind comments, but nevertheless, it is proof that you can make a difference, that the system does work. That people can change things. And to me, that is very, very reassuring. So I want to thank you all for being my friends, for loving me, for honoring me here tonight. And I am and always will be while I breathe a Georgian. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. The senator is wondering who's going to give you this award, and it is the shining light and founder of the foundation, Hank McCamish.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank each of you for being here this evening, and it is truly a tremendous honor and a privilege for me to present on behalf of the Board of Trustees of the Georgia Public Policy Foundation the 2001 Freedom Award to a great American and a great Georgian, Senator Phil Gramm.
Thank you, Senator Gramm. And Mr. McCamish, if you could just stay up on the stage, and if all of the board members would come up, we'd greatly appreciate it while we have the senator here. We are, of course, honoring not just this great leader, but also his idea that ideas have consequences, and that ideas create special interests. There aren't just special interests controlling Washington, but ideas controlling Washington. And surely there are ideas that are key to Georgia's progress. A lot of those ideas come from this organization, the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, and from these fine people who serve as its board of governors, and we'd like to give them all a round of applause. Thomas Jefferson once said, "The price of freedom is eternal vigilance." Thanks to the vision of Hank McCamish and the hard work of many people in this room, including those on the stage, the Georgia Public Policy Foundation was created to provide that eternal vigilance, a voice unbeholden to government, special interests, and politics as usual, a voice that puts policy above politics. Now, after 10 years, it's clear that Georgia's a better state because of the work we've done. But as with so many things, if not for the vision and the leadership of all of these people, and one man in particular, it would not have been created. Robert Woodruff often said, "There is no limit to what you can achieve if you don't mind who gets the credit." Well, that no one epitomizes the truth of those words more than Hank McCamish. He's been a catalyst in the development of many organizations in this state and around the world, yet few people have ever heard his name. In fact, Hank has no idea what I'm talking about right now, or I'm going to say or do, because he wouldn't have let us do it if he'd known about it. Hank, we believe that ideas make a difference. You've shown it. Your role in founding the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, your unselfish role in giving back to our state, far more than you've taken. For all those things, we'd like to present you with Georgia Public Policy Foundation's 10th Anniversary Freedom Award.
All I can say is thank you, bless you, and I love you.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, wide